That's your wife.
And my wife Lisa, most of you met yesterday, Lisa Van Susteren. She had the best excuse for not being here this morning. She's a psychiatrist. She had patients. Like all of us, they needed the help. Lisa's favorite comment, people ask Jonathan, you know, what's it like having a white psychiatrist? And she always interrupts and says, he's beyond my skills.
Wait till he gets the bill at the end.
Oh, I pay the bill every day. Okay.
Not enough.
So with that, Sarah and Josh, come on up.
Magic touch with the lights.
Magic touch.
Guys, who's the chairman? We need to know.
It's called What's Your Line? I know.
Viva. One down, let's go to Mr. Surf.
So, this is Josh, my brother, I'm Sarah. My sister will be participating from the galleries over here, and will insert as appropriate. While we're waiting for the technological advancements here, we just wanted to begin by thanking Udi, who produced a video of my father, which maybe a few of you have seen, which really has been a rich resource for us as we tell about my father and his journey, which is really what we're here to talk about, is his journey as a young man throughout his life.
You know,
There he is.
you have a microphone.
I know.
Yeah.
Is it now?
You have to hit it.
I can use this. Okay. See that couple at the other side of the restaurant, the Africans? I recognize their clothing and I know the exact tribe they're from. After much teasing and comments of disbelief from his family, and with great embarrassment to all, Poe, our father, walked over to the couple, introduced himself, and a few minutes later came back to the table with new friends in tow. He was right about the tribe, and Dr. and Dr. Grillos quickly became lifelong buddies with our family. Poe was full of surprises. From the many names he went by, Yitzhak, Isaac, Irving, Poe, to the many languages he spoke, Russian, Hebrew, Yiddish, German, and English, not to mention the various birth dates that he claimed. Let us begin with Poe, the name we will use here, since that was the name that he preferred, and his life in Lithuania. And let us begin with a time in his childhood when he was separated from his siblings, living a life that was not shared by his siblings, that was unique to him. As Russia began to suffer setbacks during World War I, Jews were accused of being German spies. They became the scapegoats. Along with other Jews in the town, the Pokempner family was exiled in 1915. This was the time that the family separated. While our father could recall with remarkable precision the important names and dates of that period, he could not explain why his parents separated and why it was determined that he and Meyer would go with his mother, eventually settling in what was then Stalingrad. All the other siblings went with his father. And while he is matter of fact in his reporting of most of his story, the scars of these separations clearly ran deep. moving him almost to tears decades later when speaking with Udi in the 80s. I asked each of you here to imagine you are 12 years old, possibly 15, depending on his birthday, and are given 48 hours to leave the home where you grew up. While you spent a wonderful summer in a rented lakeside home, the time soon approached when you are separated from your siblings and your father and find a new home with your mother and younger brother in a new country. Our grandfather took Chaim, Tzipora, Luba, Leon. I may need some correction on exactly who was there, while our father and Meyer settled in Stalingrad with their mother. It did not take long for Meyer to insist on joining his father, not being able to get along with his mother. Imagine the challenges as well as excitement that await you in your new home. You enter a new school where there is only one other Jewish student, and you are betrayed by your Jewish accent. You are welcomed by signs that read, "Kill the Jews and save Russia." It would not be surprising if you, like Poe, hated to go to school. Your mother is resourceful and establishes a small store in a good location, but your house is small, lacking running water, quite different from their home in Ponevezh. The Russian Revolution began in February 1917, and in spite of the losses and hardships, this was an exciting time for our father, who at a very early age demonstrated intense curiosity and passion about the changes swirling around him. He attended meetings of the emerging political parties, went to the library to read about the first Duma, among other things. "I wanted to read about the things that I missed," he says about himself as a 15-year-old. It was after the October Revolution that terror started. There were shortages, hostages were being taken, hangings in the street, censorship. People disappeared from the streets out of fear. Cossacks came through and took things from the house. With the Civil War beginning close to Stalingrad, Poe had the opportunity to hear Trotsky speak. Over 60 years later, he was able to quote from that speech, word for word, and also went to hear Stalin, who was described as a colorless speaker. The two wings of the family had no contact with each other during this time. They reunited in Kharkov when the Civil War ended, sharing the news that Sonia was married and Meyer had died while serving in the army, is what he said.
Sarah, let me interrupt a second. Mr. Mayor, this is... And the youngest member now of what, the 5th generation?
Vikram.
Vikram. As I was saying, they reunited in Kharkov when the Civil War ended, sharing the news that Sonia was married and Meyer had died while serving in the army. For a time, the family was under the same roof, but this did not last long. Our grandmother insisted on returning to Ponevezh, while our grandfather remained in Kovno, which served as an exit gate for those who wanted to leave for America, or Israel, or Europe. This was yet another time that our father found excitement in the cultural developments of a big city. Poe says he felt no relationship to Lithuania and wanted to see the world. He was not reluctant to be on his own. After the death of his father, and with the draft looming, Poe was able to obtain a temporary visa. He boarded the RMS Mauritania, wow, there he is, and landed on Ellis Island. He gives the exact date, June 26, 1926. His bravery, his resilience, his sense of adventure cannot escape us. Yes. Okay.
Which is 90 years, this was the 90th anniversary of his arrival this last time. So, as you would imagine, arriving in the States, especially as a 21-year-old, was a turning of the page from a past of war, revolution, and family struggle to that of a life of possibility. In his bag of surprises, Poe was armed with a charming personality, high energy, and thirst for knowledge. He also took with him to America a deep, unwavering belief in justice, equality, and fairness, and was up to the task of working for change. When asked how he could be a socialist and support any and all Zionist efforts, he said it's biological. He first arrived in Pittsburgh after securing a visa with help from Leonard and past connections with his father's shipping company. He was thankful to the Belskis who helped get him on his feet at the department store company where he worked. He felt fortunate that the department store relocated him to Detroit since it was a much more vibrant and left-leaning, politically active city. Poe caught a break when a friend's father asked him to join a wholesale fur company he had started for his son. After a short time, the son became disinterested and Poe inherited the business. Midwest Fur Company became successful, and Poe found himself with two careers, being an entrepreneur during the day and an activist in the evening, and he definitely preferred his time as an activist. On one of many of his work-related trips to New York, he met Hannah Ehringer. They married in 1942 in New York, and Poe's sister Mira serving as witness as to their marriage. Hannah joined him in Detroit, and they started the family. And they had us, Lena, Sarah, and Joshua. Hannah and her three younger brothers were born and raised in the Bronx and then Brooklyn, New York. Her parents were immigrants from Poland and were in the travel business in the States. In 1923, at the age of 9, Hannah and her father traveled to Poland to assist or possibly rescue relatives. This trip was a powerful and very disturbing experience for Hannah, strengthening her commitment to the creation of a Jewish state. Her family life was filled with music and art, and she was happy to follow that path, developing her talents as an artist. She was a loving and kind mother and fun to be around, and she and Poe were a good team. She was beloved by many members of the Pokempner family, as well as their wide circle of friends in Detroit, around the country, and around the world. If you want to hear more, come to the Ehringer reunion.
Which Bob was planning.
Yeah. They were deeply involved in the labor union activities and played a major role in the United Auto Workers of America, organizing many fundraiser events for striking workers. They were close friends with Walter and May Ruther and other leaders of the UAW. The labor Zionist branch they started in Detroit was called Branch 6, which grew to be a powerful source of support to Zionist efforts. The well-attended and loud and lively Branch 6 meetings where intense debates often occurred, but never ended without laughter, music, and dancing. One factor in choosing to buy a house was how easily they would convert the living room into a meeting room where one might find when stopping by as a college student. One factor in choosing to buy a house was how easily they could convert the living room into a meeting room where one might find when stopping by as a college student.
Cesar Chavez.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That was
We
the part
worked
I
well
didn't
together.
add. Their activism did not stop with the UAW and Branch 6. They were deeply involved in fundraising activities for many groups such as the Jewish National Fund, the Jewish Federation, the Americans for Democratic Action, of which they were founding members, and candidates for local office. With every organization came a growing circle of friends who shared their commitment and values. Poe was well known for his humor as well as his temper, or maybe it was his lack of patience. Both at times seemed a little severe and out of control. I remember being at his office while he was making a fundraising call for the Labor Zionist Project and overhearing him yelling at a customer, "What's the matter with you, you cheap bastard? I know how many fur coats you buy from me. You can give a lot more." Maybe it was just that Poe wore his heart or emotions on his sleeve. I remember a time when a close friend, Dr. Vera Dunham, a professor of Russian history, came to visit Poe while he was recovering from surgery. The two of them spent the afternoon drinking vodka, reading Russian poetry to each other, and sobbing. After she left, I asked what they were crying about, and he said, "Just two foreigners missing their motherland." Maybe it was the vodka talking, since Poe said he had no desire to return to his birthplace. However you try to understand or deal with Poe's temperament, our house was full of laughter and exposure to many unusual experiences and interesting people from all walks of life. The laughter also extended to us kids regularly teasing Poe about his accent and broken English. There were too many stories to share in this review, but needless to say, he took the ribbing well. Friends often commented on Poe's charisma and Hannah's warmth and empathy. They made a handsome couple, and people were immediately drawn to them when they entered a room. Traveling was a major part of their life, but they were most excited about their frequent trips to Israel. They visited 10 times between 1953 and 1980. The most memorable probably was the first trip in 1953 when my father had an emotional reunion with his beloved sister, Sephora. For us children of Poe and Hannah, there is probably no place more meaningful than a small town in a remote place in northern Michigan called Northport. In 1955, Poe and Hannah, along with 4 other close friends and family friends, bought a quarter-mile of beach frontage on the bay off Lake Michigan that was undeveloped and a 9-hour drive from Detroit. They referred to this close community as their kibbutz. And our neighbors became extended family, and this spot remains a magical place for us Pokempners. It's hard to describe, but the peasant housing of an old army barracks and the shared communal perspective with the other families made it a special place. Poe was more relaxed, the stress of his work and other pressures seemed to be released as he more easily engaged with his family. Early on, we would spend our summers there with Poe, making the 300-mile schlep every Friday night and back to work on Monday. Northport is a place the 3 of us see as the embodiment of our parents: community, love, common good for all, beauty, and simple living. Later in life, they spent the majority of their summers there with the unending comings and goings of guests. Even the Grillos showed up to visit the summer before Poe's death and made an authentic African dinner for us. Just another one of Poe's surprises.
And then there are our children. So we have Rena, my sister, and her family, and more, with her new daughter-in-law. And this is me with my kids when they were little, and when they're bigger, more recently, and growing with grandchildren, 3 grandchildren here. And those are the 3 grandchildren. And Josh and his family. Well, Josh isn't here, but those are his stepchildren there. And son and daughter-in-law. And there is Poe on the beach at Northport, which is a vision that brings back many memories. His happiest place for him, I think. So we just thought we would, at this point, if there are people who have questions, have anything they want to say, any thoughts? Well, we do have, we can send to people the,
Everything will be circulated.
Yeah,
We're recording.
yeah, so it's all available. Yeah. Good, good. We do feel it was quite an amazing journey for him, and we are eager to hear, to the degree that it's known, what the journey was like for Luba and Morris. Because from my point of view, we can't, it's hard to develop a concept of what that would be like. So,
Rena, did you have anything to add?
No. And you know, as I listen to everybody's presentations, one of the things I find most interesting is sort of compare the experiences of others in our peer and to compare our father with his siblings, and to note some amazing similarities and some stark differences, and to sort of plug all that in together, to wonder how all these people lived in one house together. You know, nobody could say my father was a good dresser.
except when Leonard walked in, yeah, which he often did. I can remember going to Baltimore and Leonard going through his closet and saying, here, take this, take that. And if you could see clearly the picture of him on the ship, he was dressed to the nines with a handkerchief in his pocket. I never saw that again, but he was really quite spiffed up at that point, probably benefiting from something Leonard had provided him.
Did he have on a red tie?
It's black and white.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Merle talked about, sort of knowing very little about his youth and his past, and wishing that she had asked her father more questions so that she could have known him better. But we knew very little about our father's past as well until we got Udi's video. And we asked a lot of questions. We just didn't get the answers.
I think there was a lot of pain that
There was a lot of secrets.
did not want to
There were
be
a lot of
shared.
secrets. And
Yeah.
so we would ask very simple questions. How did you meet mommy? And we looked at the stars and our eyes met. So we sort of abandoned the question and answer period.
Or when Sephora came for your wedding, and there was this little group speaking Hebrew and crying, and so what's going on? And he said, I'll tell you later, and never found out.
Was the first reunion?
Right.
Yeah.
One observation I would make, of the 10 kids, geographically, our two fathers were the closest. We literally grew up just a couple blocks, and as a result, every Passover worked together. Josh and I would be across from each other, spilling wine and laughing and getting castigated.
That hasn't changed.
Daddy no longer is there to say, I'm going to
Right.
separate you two.
Yeah.
Well, so we were very close. We were close in age, more or less, so that meant a lot. Our fathers were close, although they had some friction, as siblings would, nothing monumental. But what's very interesting, and I'm sure it's because of that closeness in Detroit, that now for the last 25, 30 years, we have all gotten together pretty much every holiday, always on Passover, always on Rosh Hashanah, with a year or two, and on Hanukkah, there's a tradition at Sarah's house, and it's in large part because of the glue from those years, and of course, we're all here in Washington, and that's probably not a coincidence that we're all together here. Josh comes in readily.
And I would, as you mentioned, the Hanukkah party, that has an interesting history to it, because the Hanukkah party began, I think we figured in 1953, when Yossi and Maya made a trip to Detroit, and they started the Hanukkah party at our house in Detroit with Maya and the candles, and that was a tradition that has continued to this day.
And there is, the final tradition there is that every Passover, I was the simple son. Always the simple son, yes.
Okay, so I sometimes, from our father and our uncle, like to tell stories. The best immigrant story I've ever heard is Uncle Poe goes on a train to Canada, and he hadn't brought his passport, and they asked him, what state are you from? So he didn't want to go through, where were you born? He didn't want to go through that he's from Lithuania, blah, blah, blah. So he says, Pennsylvania. And then the second story is the Passover story of Johnny and, mostly it's Josh's story. So my dad liked to speak Yiddish, use a lot of, as a matter of fact, we speak a fluent dirty Yiddish. And I don't know, we were doing something, Johnny was doing something, and all of a sudden Dad says to Johnny, fartik, which means enough already. And all of a sudden Josh goes, oh, Dad, did you hear what Chaim said? Fart. He said the fart word. Never forget that. But seriously, especially since our dad died when I was 30 and Johnny was 26, Poe and Hannah were like parents to us. Was always that link.
That's a record now.
No, she cried in the first hour. She cried in the first hour. Just nobody saw it.
That's wonderful.
Get
My
there.
final
Get there.
comments on Pope, Judy.
I had a nickname, and I called him Uncle Popo, and he was my favorite uncle. And then time was.
Oh, that's okay.
Maya?
I'd like to add, Sarah mentioned about the Hanukkah party, and one of our best uncles that I ever remember was Poe and Hannah. They used to come quite often to Israel and stay with us and spend time with us. While we were stationing in Holland, they used to go to Israel, and on the way they stopped in Holland, and we took some trips with them. And we felt like not just uncle and aunt, they were like friends to us.
Yeah.
And if we just mention Chaim, so all the three of them were very dear to us. We were very close to Paul and Hannah, but later on, when Chaim came to Israel, we made Aliyah in 1974, a year after Yom Kippur War, and he settled in Rehovot, not far from us, and we got to know Chaim a little bit. We were very sorry that 2 years after he passed away, but we were very friendly and very close to him. He stayed with us, we spent time with him. The last Passover, 3 weeks after the last Passover he passed away, he stayed with us and we loved him. So we loved all these two uncles and Hannah in between.
Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, let's do this. As we go through the transition of Yossi, I wanted I could thank all of you, and I do indeed, but I wanted to give some specific thank yous. I started last night, but this is where we have the most people assembled at the same time. Aviva, certainly, hold your applause. Aviva for last night, Sarah for tonight, and Josh and Rena were extremely generous joining us on kind of providing the meals. So they get a big thank you. Udi really outdid himself on the substance and the presentations and everything. He happens to be a professional in that area, which certainly helped all of us. But Udi, and then the tape with Poe, which the CD, I'm sure you get a copy somehow.
Yeah.
And offer put it all online.
Right.
It's on the cloud.
That really is that's as close as we get to a definitive history, audio history of the family. So Udi gets credit for that. Abigail, a shout out to you for helping. Sarah and I kind of took the lead on planning, so Abigail was very helpful. Chovev, Yossi, and Gil were the originators of the idea, but for them we would not have done this. So we appreciate that. And the Israelis traveling the furthest, the family from Seattle area, from Washington, the furthest domestically, and of course those from California, especially Judy, being the matriarch of the family, to go to that afternoon. So, as Jews, I know people will come up later and just tell me who I didn't acknowledge rather than thanking me for acknowledging the people I did, but I believe those are the big people. With that said, any final questions, we'll go to Yossi, then we'll do our family, we'll do the other relatives, and then we'll have the film, and we'll be out maybe a little bit past 4, but with plenty of time to get to Sarah's an hour and a half after.
I'm going to go to the bathroom. Don't let you.